Hello. Hi. This will be a longer stream, or sorry, a video than normally. I want to talk about a TV show that I have been watching a lot lately and enjoy very much from my childhood. It's called Naruto. It's a Japanese show based on a cartoon from a Japanese cartoonist called, I ought to know this by heart, Kishimoto, I think. Kishimoto. It is based Masashi Kishimoto. He is a Japanese cartoonist or manga artist who is known for his Naruto series. The series follows. If you haven't watched it as a show, then this video might. I'm going to talk about a particular part of the series that I find most interesting, and I'm going to explain why I find it most interesting. So, the part of the series that I want to bring your attention to is the chapter of the manga known as the essentially what is captured in episode 367, 368, 369, and 370. These 5 episodes of the show and the chapters corresponding to that from the cartoon or the manga. And it all begins. The setting is not really important. I don't want to spend too much of the video explaining what the setting is for this debate, but there's a war going on. These four former leaders of the village system have been revived to fight in this war, and instead of being allowed to participate on the side of the allied forces, they are kept here by this character, Uchiha Sasuke, and his burning and quite immediate need to have the answers to these two questions. What does it mean to be a village, and what does it mean to be a shinobi, a ninja? And these are deep. These aren't the deepest questions this fictional work addresses, but they are pretty close to the deepest ones. In talking about this, they go back to these two. They go back to an era before there was a village system. This is my favorite part of Naruto, and Naruto is a large show with lots of characters. But this particular part of it, and I enjoy all of Naruto almost. This particular aspect caught my eye in a very particular way. So, in a time when there was no village system, there was only an era of warring states. It was sort of like a free-for-all, tribe against tribe. It's something like, it's a metaphor, essentially, for the start of human civilization, right? Not going from tribal warfare to a city-state. It's something that the Greeks talked a lot about in terms of Plato's Republic and other sort of works. This is a Japanese fictionalized retelling of that myth and what it took for the warring states, the warring tribes to band together into a village, into a state, right? So it plays with deep philosophical themes, and exceptionally deep ones. As an aside, I should mention that manga, the Japanese art form, I haven't found another commercial or another art form that it plays with concepts in a way that the Western art forms don't yet do. They play with archetypal themes to an extent that can sometimes be worthy of satire. It can be a parody of itself, but it can also be really. They can go deeper in a sense, or they can at least highlight things that are very cliched and make us appreciate why they were cliched. Um, so it's an interesting mirror into our own human nature, our own capacity for cooperation as opposed to warfare. But the the whole story starts with these two kids. Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara. And this is Madara. He's throwing stones by a river. Already at this point, this is when he's young. He's already lost several of his brothers to warfare with the Senju clan, and he's met by Senju Hashirama, the man who would be called the god of shinobi and the first leader of the village state. Now I'm not going to recap all of this because if you haven't seen it, it's too much material to cover in a short video, and if you have seen it, then you wouldn't need my sort of rudimentary retelling of it. So this is these two young children of opposing clans. They meet and they become fast friends, and they share a dream of, they live in a world of where death is imminent, and trust and all these things are it's essentially it's an analogy for our world. Can you the central theme that they're trying to answer, these two, as they become friends and learn who learn more about each other, is can they trust each other? Can they? I think the phrase that the translators use is, can they show each other their guts, like their true intentions? Can you ever truly know someone else? And this question, can I trust someone? Especially when your brothers have been killed by their clan, and I mean, this deserves to be gone into in depth, and I don't own any copyright to this claim, but I don't have any rights to this material, but I believe this falls under fair use. So they become friends. They can relate to each other. They will both lost siblings. They both. This stone tossing turns out to be a good metaphor, because the stone making it to the other end is sort of like their dream of creating a village state where children can be safe. It's sort of like an upgrade from the all-out warfare system. So, I mean, the reason I think this is the best part of Naruto isn't because it has the best fights, but it's because it goes deepest. It answers question, or it raises questions that isn't necessarily the same. Naruto is a show that tackles many themes: solitude, loneliness, isolation, loyalty, friendship, warfare, death, finitude. It asks a lot of questions, and it's quite funny at the same time. But this particular philosophical question of, like, can you trust someone else? And take this for example. This is where Madara and Hashirama both dream of their, like, this. They come to the point of knowing each other that they're down to one brother. And he has this idea: let's build our settlement here and make it so kids won't have to kill each other. Now, obviously, this is an extreme setting. I doubt we were in a system, even tribally, where kids were murdering each other. But there's been an awful lot of blood in human history, and you don't have to reach for a specific case where tribes were killing babies. You don't have to go there to appreciate the theme of cooperation out of necessity coming together to create something better. And Hashirama has this vision. He says, we'll create a school where kids can train and grow up stronger, assign missions that fit individuals' abilities, have superiors who can properly assign ranks and train kids. It'll be a place where kids don't have to be sent into harsh battlefronts. And Madara appreciates this sort of vision, and they have this dream to create something better, something. They hint at something more important than striving. Something. It's almost like the concept of cooperation itself. And so they obviously run into trouble. Their clans learn of their friendship, and they inform each other that, he's Uchiha, he's Senju, and so they meet again. They exchange these stones, and on these stones is written run. Like they're both, they don't want their clans to fight, and so they try to run. Conflict ensues, and there's essentially the end of this conflict is that their pipe dream of peace ends up being impossible to attain. They're unable to find the common ground. So this becomes the overarching theme. Maybe it isn't possible to reach this pipe dream of ours. And this pipe dream is more than just the establishment of a village. It's more than just putting up buildings. It's something that will continue to haunt the theme and the writings. This is very late in the... I think he released something like 600 issues. And these chapters, or something like 800 issues, a lot of numbers. This is laid out into the publishing. We've already established the main character. This is towards the end of the whole conflict arc. And then we get this sort of retrospective narrative of what this will of fire that has lived inside all the villages. You sort of have to watch the show to appreciate it, but it's something like hope. It's something like hope in the human condition. It's something like not despairing. Something like the belief in the authentic good. That is the vision, the pipe dream that they're both sharing. And they're both vessels, in a sense, for this historical step forward into this larger dream. And Hashirama believes in it more than Madara in this sense, because he's still... You really haven't given up, have you? And this bitterness, this human bitterness that you have... My brothers were killed by your clan. That's something that's not easy to... There's no need to show our guts to each other. And they go through a lengthy period of fighting. They both become clan leaders, and wouldn't you know it, Madara's last brother is killed, and he gains more power, and it becomes sort of fictional. But Hashirama still keeps this dream, this sort of like vision of the future where there will be a city-state. There will be cooperation between different tribes. There will be hope. There will be something transcendent. There will be something better than the sum of the parts happening on Earth, right? So this question that... There's a reason why I started with this. Due to a lot of circumstances, one of the main characters has come to this point of reanimating the Hashirama to ask him, what does it mean to be a village? And what does it mean to be a shinobi? Why is this enduring, why is this vision that you had so enduring, and why has it created this conflict that people are willing to die and betray and live out selfless lives to protect this village? Like, what is the village? And that just hits to the core. You don't even have to be very philosophically sophisticated to realize that question as pertinent to humans in the 21st century. Like, what is essentially our village? Like, our city, our town, our homes. Like, what is cooperation? What is a village? It's a question that is answered every time you talk to your neighbor, every time you go to the store. Like, what is a village? What is cooperation? Why do we do it? It's that deep. And you might say you're overanalyzing it, but I think if anything, I think I'm underanalyzing. I'm winging this, and I could write tomes on this. But they end up defeating Madara because they outnumber him, and partly because Hashirama is more skilled than him. But Hashirama refuses to give up on his dream, even though Madara is resigned to the fact that his clan has lost. And Hashirama says here, can't we skip stones again, right? Like in Elden Times. And Madara makes this sort of cynical claim that there is technically a way that you could show me your guts. You could physically show me your guts. You can kill yourself, or you can kill your older brother, or your younger brother. And then he would be willing to cooperate with the Senju clan. The Senju clan and the Uchiha clan are the most powerful clans, and if they came together to form a nation state, it would instantly become the de facto model, and everyone would effectively be an arms race to emulate it. And they both know this from old and from intuitive. So what does Hashirama do? Well, he makes this sort of grand sacrifice. He says, you are truly kind, because he gave him an option where he didn't have to kill his little brother, like Madara's little brother had been killed, and Madara knew the pain of that, and gave him an out that wasn't that. And so it's a way of testing Hashirama's resolve and his vision. And after my death, do not kill Madara. I forbid any fighting between Uchiha and Senju. He believes that strongly in their vision, their joint vision, that even if he's gone, Madara will still follow the village vision. And then he makes them swear. And this stone skipping that intercuts with his grand sacrifice, that's close to transcendent. That's close to transcendental for me, because as he's prepared to die for his vision, the vision of just what's right, to be willing to die for a future where, yeah, there's just something about it, like whatever you're aiming at, that you just recognize it as authentically right. Like, it almost brings you to tears to think about. It's that thing that we all wish everyone else would always aim for. It's the good in us. And then Madara stops him, and the metaphorical stone skip is attained, right? And when that stone lands on the other side of the bank, they've made it cross the unknown. They've landed on the other shore, and they've made something better. It's almost more than the hero's journey in a way, because they've built something that is stronger than just themselves. They built a world where innocence can be protected. And this is where this series sort of reaches its transcendent peak for me, because they've hit on the author has hit on a theme here that is trite, but through cooperation we fundamentally become stronger. And that's a theme that the main protagonist keeps returning to. He's like this the protagonist of this show is like a force of nature that embodies that we can, through cooperation, be more. And then Madara says, "I have seen your guts," and that is a village, right? The coming together of humanity. The when we first started to form states and cities and civilization, we decided not to be warring. Whatever genetics happened between our evolution from chimpanzees 6 million years ago, whatever sort of slow genetic tendency there was towards cooperation, that is what this sort of captures, this human tendency to cooperate. And cooperation is essentially our greatest weapon towards all other forms of life on this planet. We've been able to dominate because we can cooperate. Chimpanzees will not cooperate. So it's an homage to that. It's that deep. It's gene deep, and the genes just sort of sing out in praise of, yes, that we're doing it right. It's a very emotionally grabbing sort of moment. And so they began building the village, and it was dreamlike, as he said. They would ally with, essentially, it doesn't matter, the Land of Fire. They would create a peaceful nation state where village and nation stood on equal footing. So the village sort of turns into this military might because, ninjas are gathered there. It's a metaphor, right, for statesmanship and military might coming together to form a coherent whole, right? And then they're seeing their vision happen. And then, yeah, I thought we were just dreaming. And then even Madara can see that, he's come past his hatred. He's come past his grief. He's actually, because Madara cooperates, the village is formed. It's on his back. And then Hashirama wants Madara to become the leader, the fire, the leader of the fire village, the fire shadow, the leader from the shadows, the fire shadow, the Hokage. And yeah, he wants Madara to think of the village as his siblings. And then he gives Madara gives it the name Konohagakure, the village hidden in the leaves, which it is. It's a hidden village essentially, and they still retain their chops. And then, yeah, I mean, politics quickly emerges, and Madara hasn't made the Hokage due to political reasons. Hashirama is, and Madara leaves the village because he has had a vision or a change of heart or some form of, yeah, he's turning away from the vision, not because grief sometimes cripples people. Grief and hate and life just cripples people. And then Madara makes a good point here. You call me your brother, but which one of us would you sacrifice for the sake of the village? And this sort of resonates. I mean, you might have friends that you see turn bad or turn to something that they turn away from the transcendent, the light, right? And you try to guide them, you try to help them on their path, but they can't or won't walk with you. They, even if you don't have the answer, just trying to turn them away from self-destruction just doesn't work. And Madara is set. He's had enough. He's going to leave the village. But for a brief moment in time, he shared that vision and he made it real. And his whole clan, the whole Uchiha clan, which is very militarily mightful, has joined him in his vision. So cooperation is merely a quieter form of conflict. Like they disagree on this, on the sincerity of Hashirama's vision. And the village system, it does show its age and its weakness across time. But yeah, Madara won't listen, right? And then Madara talks about his dreams of the far future, his true dreams. And it's a world where Madara has visions on a dream that is. Madara has a dream of a future that is actually void of suffering. He's trying to remove what Buddhists would call dukkha, suffering. And Hashirama has reached a true, like something that can actually be attained, right? A sort of coherent nation state in this horrible world, like this Hobbesian world that we live in. Hashirama and Madara has sort of created this flawed but manageable step forward. They haven't created a utopia, they've created a sensible state system. And Madara seeks further than that. He seeks to eradicate suffering through his plans. But the point is, Madara is deluded at this point by an antagonist that is a level above him. But that isn't the point of this. The point of this story that the first Hokage is telling this young Uchiha Sasuke is that, you know, he's telling him the story because he wants to articulate how the village was their vision. And this statement from Madara, the dreams of the far future, that sends shivers down my spine, because many of us have dreams of the far future. And how do we know we're not deluding ourselves? And it's deep questions. They're essentially the only ones that can fight each other. And yeah, well, Hashirama's dream came true, and their dream came true. Everyone's respected and started copying their village system. And I feel like, in a way, I feel like this is the heart of the story. The Konoha, the village that the main character Naruto wants to protect, the will of fire that he embodies, it's sort of the center character in a way. Much like the Force is the central character in Star Wars. It's like, yes, the show is called Naruto and he is the protagonist, but the central theme of the story, I feel like, is being explored through the village, through everyone's willingness to sacrifice and die for this village. And so, yeah, Shinobi children got to know about learning and playing instead of battle. And they didn't die when they were 12 or 13. And then Madara came back to attack, this time twisted by, you know, hate and grief and bitterness and visions of unattainable utopias and all the resentment of being and the burden of existence and all the things that can turn the human heart sour and destroy what is actually good for the sake of what is conceivably ideal, right? Madara embodies that sort of like vengeful compassion, you might say, like this sort of compassionate thought that we should eradicate suffering. And in order to do that, we need to destroy this sort of like civilizational tendency. And it's that, not to get political, but you can see the themes play out in human politics. And it's the writer Kishimoto is not naive in any sense. These are deep themes. And his message seems to be to favor realistic cooperation over like utopian pipe dreams. And then, you know, they have this big anime fight, which, you know, is it's great. It's great entertainment. It really is. Like, these fights are fun and great, but they're not part of the for me. They're the combat is sort of like it's the exterior manifestation of the actual underlying philosophical conflict, the ideological conflict. So this time you're not going to reach the other side, Madara says. And that speaks volumes, right? It's resentment for the transcendent vision of humanity's future becoming instantiated. And so, long story short, Hashirama says that he, yeah, this face here says it all. He's made his mind up, and you know what comes next. He's he uses his technique, his jutsu, to catch Madara from behind and kill his friend for the sake of his, not just his dream or his vision, but for what has actually been attained. He has taken on the role of protector of the dream instead of just visionary. I'm going to protect our, or rather my, village. Because Madara has betrayed that which matters most, no matter what it takes. I still believe to this day that protecting the village shall lead to protection of people, shinobi and children. I shall not tolerate anyone who seeks to harm the village, be they friend, brother, or even my very child, right? So Hashirama here betrays, or he reveals a commitment to the vision that might border on unhealthy. So the question is more ambiguous. What is the village? And yeah. And Madara even says so. You've changed. So he clearly didn't intend to die in this fight. It was a test of Hashirama's might. And yeah, he made a resolution that day to endure in order to watch over the present. So in a Jungian sense, you could say that Hashirama made the transition from naive boy to man. Like, he shouldered the burden, the responsibility for the betterment of being, for the betterment of everyone. And this surprises Madara. He didn't realize that sometimes when we're aiming down in our lives, we're aiming towards the bottom of the barrel, we don't realize that people's support of us has been conditional. And sometimes we need to hit rock bottom in order to realize that we were guarded. Our friends had our backs even in moments where we didn't know they did. We didn't realize what our friends did for us until we've actually cut them off. And this is hitting Madara right now. Like, I leaned on your empathy. I leaned on your support more than I knew that I did. I've hit an existential point where this leads to my death. These actions lead to my death. And this is what, Hashirama has changed. And Madara makes the point here that you're mistaking the cause for the end. And essentially, I'm not going to say it leads the village to darkness, Hashirama's commitment, but there are shadows in the nation state that will lead to the events of the series. But this is like the foundational myth. Hashirama's brother, who ended up becoming the second Hokage, says it here. What is all important is the village. The village is the keystone. And then, Sasuke points out he's not innocent or a child, and he's come to learn the truth of this. At this crucial moment, at this war that will decide the fate of the world, he's come to this philosophy. And this is so good. If you ever want to hook a philosopher, or anyone philosophically minded, create a big external conflict, and then while this conflict is going on, have an investigation of intellectual concepts, because we all know, or at least philosophers suspect, that underlies the tension, and then ignoring the physical conflict and dealing with the intellectual themes. It's great. And long story short, Madara doesn't die here. He has taken measures to prevent his demise, but the fact remains Hashirama did intend and go through with murdering his friend and collaborator. The village Madara and I envisioned in the beginning is something that joined one clan to another, an invaluable cornerstone that created order out of chaos and then maintained it. It protected the children, averted pointless conflict, and made peace a possibility. So these are, I mean, this is a Japanese author, so these themes aren't necessarily Western. Not exclusively Western, not exclusively Judeo-Christian. They're Taoistic, one might say, order out of chaos, and there's Buddhism in here. There's a lot of intellectual themes that he's using. He's sort of Japan, 20th century and 21st century Japan is sort of like this place where old Asian ideals and Taoism and Confucianism, even though that's Chinese, and Buddhism and now Western ideals are all melding, right? It's becoming westernized really quickly. And so in all this conflict, this author is hitting these, he's using that landscape to hit on these universal human truths through this medium of like these mangas. So it's just so good. It's something we haven't seen before in the West, because we haven't seen the Japanese take on the rapid Western influences on the old Asian themes. So it's really, yeah. The village has given rise to this contradiction, the contradiction in nation building, where people are safe but they're protected by the suffering of selfless heroes. So yeah, Hashirama here takes responsibility for it. He says, I am the shinobi who created these circumstances. Furthermore, I am also the one who considered them acceptable. So he comes from a world where children were killed needlessly, and he did what he had to end that. And he believes that, shinobi, or humans essentially, are those who endure for a purpose. But depending on what purpose is, shinobi can change, just as both Madara and I did. So the central theme of this conflict, or the central theme of this part of Naruto, is this village as the cornerstone. And we could go on, we can dig deep into the backstory of why this conflict has been brought up, and I can move on to what happens next. But it's sort of that what I wanted to get at was that stone toss moment. Not to sorry, I lost the track here a bit. But yeah, what I wanted to get at was this moment where the stone hits the opposite side of the river. That sort of transcendent moment where their vision came true, and just what that says for sacrifice, for accepting, for doing something for the greater good that doesn't benefit you, something redemptive, something sacrificial, something transcendent. And just that art can get at these themes. That's why we respond to them. And so yeah, I needed to highlight the fact that this sort of seemingly children's cartoon was able to reach this level. I mean, I didn't make this. I'm not the first to comment on this, but the choices that the next generation then has to make, knowing the full story, is, I mean, it's Sasuke's brother Itachi ended up destroying the Uchiha clan to preserve the integrity of the village. So he shouldered the burden of the betrayal that was brewing within the Uchiha, and it sort of led Sasuke to this question: what does it mean to be a village, and what does it mean to be a shinobi? Why did my brother bear the largest burden he possibly could have for your vision. And in the middle of a war, we need the answer to this question, because that is essentially what the war is for. And it sort of the story moves on here to more and deeper themes, and the responsibility of all the four former leaders are brought up in turn. So the question now for Sasuke is: should you destroy the village that has cost your brother and you ended your clan, or what should you do? And his answer, we won't see it here. It comes later, and this is sort of like a flashback of all his memories with his brother, who is he's going through his own, and it's almost like the burden of being is sort of reflected in his psychology. So he's deciding here to fight for the world. He's going to the battlefield. He's going to fight Madara, who's come back through elaborate means to see his utopian vision through. He's intending to end suffering through warfare and essentially an enslavement. Yeah, essentially he's trying to instill a totalitarian regime that he is deluded into thinking will work through difficult means. So through Sasuke, who's been possibly irredeemably lost earlier in the series, now decides to... There's something here that he can't ignore, and there's something here that's worth fighting for. And that's sort of what this story becomes about. And then they all go. They all essentially use elaborate techniques to come to the aid of the battlefield. And the forefathers come to our aid in the time of ultimate need, and it's symbolic all the way down to the bloody core, right? And it's just this is why this series is why this is the crux of the series for me. There are other interpretations. Many might put there's a lot of other redemptive moments in the story that might be more, but this dream of the far future, this true dream, everything we aim for is here in the village. It's just it just hits so it hits at something I can't articulate, and no matter how many words I expend or how much effort I try, I can't get to it, because it's transcendental. It's more than we can say. And that's just it shows the way towards what is worth fighting for and what is worth believing in. The human project as valuable. And that's just right. So, thank you for coming to my TED Talk on Naruto. And if you like this show, let me know what parts of it you like. And if you haven't watched this show, I hope you see it or read it in book form or in televised form, because it's it has a lot of questions like these and a lot of moments like these, and it can be cartoony and trite, and yeah, it falls short of its own vision many times, but there's a mind underneath it that is communicating something important to 21st century man. So yeah, thank you for watching. Don't subscribe, don't like the video. Peace.